Hello everyone, and welcome back to Game Easy, Roll Good. Today we get to finally continue our series on our Build a Bard series. This is a series where I try to build a Bard. It is historically a class that, while I think about it a lot, I've never actually played because whenever I try to build a character, I just feel like I can't really get into it. And that really just comes down to me feeling like the spell list is very narrow, and then you don't get to choose that many spells anyway. So you usually, no matter what kind of Bard you end up building, you tend to take the same spells pretty often. And even though I do sometimes do that throughout these videos, I take many of the same spells that I think are very good, sort of my personal favorites. I've just never really been able to feel like I can really express myself with the Bard. So that's kind of really my goal here, is to take the Bard subclasses that were available in the Player's Handbook, the new one for 2024, take the Bard from levels 1 to 20. Spells are really kind of the main focus here. So I've already covered the College of Dance as well as the College of Glamour in my previous two videos for Build a Bard. And then today we're going to look at the College of Valor. This is sort of like the martial focused Bard. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and start with our species options. So while many College of Valor builds are sort of hyper focused on maximizing the extra attack, where you get the normal attack that you make as well as being able to cast one cantrip as part of your attack action, and usually you'd like multi-class with a Warlock to get Eldritch Blast to milk even more attacks out of your attack action that way. We're not multi-classing in this video, so we don't have that option. You know, we still can cast cantrips, we just don't have a really good sort of exploitative attack cantrip like Eldritch Blast that we could use as part of that. It would be a very sort of honest, you know, attacking into a Firebolt, attacking into a Vicious Mockery, attacking into a Blade Ward, that sort of thing. I also think that those builds often assume that you're going to be a lower level, which is pretty fair because, again, many adventures take place at the lower levels or the lower to mid levels. But since we're going all the way to level 20, we also just can't forget that we are still a full caster who is completely on curve because we're not multi-classing. So even though we are a more sort of martial focused Bard, we are still a full caster at the end of the day. We're going to be casting spells using our action many times. So we don't really need to focus so heavily on being the best martial because that's not really what we're here for. We don't even get like weapon masteries or even a fighting style as the Valor Bard. So we're going to try to find like a different avenue to build this Valor Bard. And it's actually been a while since I put these slides together, so I don't even quite remember what I did. But let's go ahead and take a look at some species that I thought were interesting when it comes to building a Valor Bard. So starting with, we have the Aasimar. They get a temporary flight speed once per long rest, or a damaging aura once per long rest, or an AoE frighten once per long rest. The Goliath is also an interesting choice because it has the Stone's Endurance, a proficiency bonus per long rest, or it has the other options as well. Human, of course, gives you the extra origin feat. Orc gives you the Relentless Endurance, which I thought was nice. Earth Genasi has the ability to ignore difficult terrain. Gives you the Blade Ward cantrip, which is kind of cool in 2024, and then Pass Without Trace as well is also very useful. Hobgoblin gives you Fey Gift and Fortune from the Mini. Shuddark High gives you sort of the on-demand Misty Step with all resist for the next round when you do that. And then the Warforged, of course, just gives you a pretty honest +1 AC if you're trying to build maybe a little more tanky and just buff that AC as high as you can go. Of these options, my mind kind of immediately went to both the Earth Genasi or the Hobgoblin. The Earth Genasi, of course, having that Blade Ward cantrip and the extra attack, I think that's a really good way to like, you know, kind of buff your AC, and that way you can make one attack and then cast Blade Ward on yourself without having to spend your whole action to do it, at least for as long as you maintain concentration. The Hobgoblin is also pretty cool because they get the ability to basically get the help action as a bonus action, which kind of works in conjunction with inspiration and the special inspiration that the Valor Bard gets, where they can give it additional bonuses to the targets of their inspiration. And then Fortune from the Mini as well as a way to sort of shore up your saving throws and other ability checks, I believe. Well, I think you couldn't really go wrong with either the Earth Genasi or the Hobgoblin. For my purposes, I'll probably just stay with the Earth Genasi. Being able to ignore difficult terrain in certain situations is very helpful. I like the ability to weave in the Blade Ward cantrip on your extra attack after level 6. And then, of course, Pass Without Trace. Just a good spell to have in your pocket if no one else has it. And since we can't really assume what our party composition is, I do like to pick up these utility spells when I can. That is our species option. This doesn't have a huge impact on the rest of our build, but for my purposes, that's what I would choose, is the Earth Genasi here. So then moving on to our ability scores. So again, we're assuming point buy as always. We're not doing any damage calculations in this video. It's not that kind of video. So really what our ability scores aren't super important, but there's basically using point buy two spreads that I would typically consider. I mean, you can really do whatever you want with point buy, but you usually end up with one of two spreads in general. That being either more dex focused or more con focused for your Bard. Dexterity, of course, for your armor, and then you, of course, con for your health, and of course your constitution saving throws for your concentration. And then, of course, charisma is your main stat. You can really put that 10 that's in wisdom wherever you want to put it, whether it's in strength, intelligence, or wisdom, doesn't really matter. And since we aren't multi-classing, so we can't get Pact of the Blade to focus only on our charisma, we do have to keep in mind that we are a Valor Bard and we are going to be attacking, and whatever weapon we're we're attacking with is going to be using whatever that weapon would be using to attack with. Very likely this would be a dex-based, a finesse weapon, since we are already going to have a decent dex. But there is a consideration when you're building a Valor Bard, whether you want to basically lower your charisma and then focus on your dexterity and really build sort of a martial focused bard. But again, since we are going to higher levels, since we are not doing any multi-classing at all, we're really not going to be as strong of a martial as every other martial in the game. So I think it still benefits us to just try to be a caster first and focus on our charisma. That leaves our dexterity or constitution next. The Valor Bards do get medium armor proficiency, which means that we don't really need to have a dexterity higher than 14. We chose con as our secondary stat here. And again, probably since we're going to be more of a melee focused Valor Bard as well, we want those extra hit points to maybe be able to survive an extra hit here or there. Again, not a huge impact, but that would be my train of thought on this one. So the next thing would be our background options. So, I've covered a lot that I don't think that the player's handbook backgrounds in 2024 are very good. I think they're way too limiting, but we are going to work with what we have. And I will point out some other backgrounds that were more recently released that work very similarly to backgrounds in the player's handbook for 2024 that have like an origin feat that comes with them. Since our two main stats are going to be charisma and constitution, we can immediately get rid of any background that doesn't have both charisma and constitution in it. That leaves us with the charlatan, the hermit, and the merchant. I would say of these backgrounds, I was immediately looking at the ones that have both healer and lucky. I think I kind of actually want to pick up healer here just for the ability to med pack my allies in combat. It's sort of playing that battle medic if I need to, in addition to being able just to use our spell slots as well. We have a few different ways to support our allies in that way. So for the purposes of this video, we'll be assuming that we have the hermit background. Again, it doesn't really impact our choices throughout the rest of the actual quote-unquote build that we're going to do, but I did want to point out one non-player's handbook background option, and that is going to be the rewarded background. This is from the Book of Many Things. This background gives you a choice of lucky, magic initiate, or the skilled feat. It also gives you proficiency in insight and persuasion, but if I had that choice, I'd probably choose magic initiate here for Shillelagh. That would allow me to use my charisma for my attacks if I'm using a club or a quarterstaff, which I absolutely could be. You could also pick this up by choosing the human species to get the additional origin feat and pick up the magic initiate druid that way. Arguably, a spell like Shillelagh conflicts a lot with like our bardic inspiration, maybe other things that we'd be doing anyway as a bard, but I think this actually works relatively well because again, we aren't really focusing on attacking, so we can use that bonus action to Shillelagh whenever we feel like we're going to attack, or if we just have an open bonus action on one of our turns to make sure that that is running as soon as we can, because usually still as a full caster, our first turn is going to be casting whatever our big powerful either control spell or big buff spell is going to be, and then we can just Shillelagh as a bonus action, or there's a way to weave it in there because we don't need to worry about attacking immediately all the time. We're typically going to have something better to do. So all that aside, let's get into the actual build itself, starting here at level 1. So we get all of our important stats so far. We get our Blade Ward from being an Earth Genasi. We start with a True Strike this time. Since we are a weapon-based bard, I just think that's going to be one of our best cantrips to choose. We're going to be picking up Mage Hand here as well. I think that's possibly another good cantrip to have. Again, remembering that we can weave one cantrip into our attacks when we take the attack action after level 6. So either you can make like one normal attack and then True Strike, or you can make one normal attack and then Mage Hand, or just cast any cantrip, a normal attack, and then Blade Ward. If your DM likes to put in sort of objects and things that you can interact with in the battlefield, then being able to attack once and then Mage Hand to pull a lever that's too far away from you otherwise, you certainly have those kinds of options. So I think that's a fun little thing that you can do. It does require your whole action to move the Mage Hand on later turns, but you can also just recast it. Again, Command is always a good spell. We're picking up Fairy Fire here because we're not running Starry Wisp, so we have a way to deal with invisible creatures. Healing Word will give us a lot of mileage with the healer feat if we took the Hermit background. And I think Thunderwave, I think this is a pretty common sort of offensive bard spell, but especially for a Valor Bard who's sort of more likely to be up in the mix, is more likely to have more than one enemy in the range to do that. So that's level 1. Let's go ahead and move on to level 2, where we get our expertise. Again, you can put your expertise in whatever you want. I don't really care. I don't think there's really anything to focus on here. We are an Earth Genasi, so we would eventually get the Pass Without Trace, so we may want to have expertise in stealth. We're going to pick up Featherfall. I think I pick up Featherfall pretty frequently here. Again, it's just one of those spells that you always want to have in your pocket, although I say that now, but then at level 3, we're just going to go ahead and get rid of it. As we get on to our second level spells, we're going to pick up Aid and Enlarge Reduce. Theme that I believe that I was trying to go for here is just combat buff spells and like support spells like Aid and your Enlarge Reduce. I really like Aid as sort of like a downranked mass healing word. It doesn't hit as many targets, but it does increase your maximum hit points as well as increasing your current hit points by the same amount, by 5 per spell level. On top of that, we get our first subclass feature. So we have Combat Inspiration. This one allows the target of our Bardic Inspiration to use it in a slightly different way. If they're hit by an attack roll, they can roll their Bardic Inspiration and increase their armor class by that amount, potentially causing that attack to miss. Or they can use it offensively. If they hit a creature with an attack roll, they can then add the Bardic Inspiration die to that attack's damage to the target. So that's pretty cool too. Additionally, we also get martial weapon training. This is what gives us our medium armor and shield proficiency, as well as martial weapon proficiency. And then also we can use a simple weapon or a martial weapon as our spellcasting focus for our spells. So we're supporting our allies not just with the aid spells and the enlarge reduce, but we're also able to help our allies by helping them buff their AC or offensively helping them add more damage to their attacks. So that's level 3. Let's go ahead and move on to level 4, where we get our first feat choice. And we're actually going to pick up Warcaster here. We'll take the +1 to Charisma. We get an extra cantrip. We'll pick up Thunderclap as sort of like an AoE choice since we'll be in melee range and have more enemies in range more often. We're also just going to pick up Enhanceability here. I don't really like Enhanceability quite as much, of course, in 2024, since they took off all the other fun things that you can do with that spell. But since we're on the theme of, again, buffing our allies in certain ways, this is one at least decent out of combat spell. I don't remember exactly what I did throughout this video, but I imagine I probably don't keep Enhanceability to the very end. And then Warcaster, of course, is going to help us protect our concentrations. And then, of course, if a creature leaves our threatened range, then we can also do things like cast a command at them. So then moving on then to level 5, we get our 3rd level spells. We get our Bardic Inspiration becomes a D8. We get the Font of Inspiration to come back on a short rest. Again, no real big synergies with Bardic Inspiration for the College of Valor Bard. We also get Pass Without Trace from the Earth Genasi at this level. For our 3rd level spells, we're going to pick up Hypnotic Pattern. Again, I know it is probably one of the more powerful 3rd level spells, and I don't always like to take the most powerful option, but at this moment, we don't really have a lot of good party support spells at 3rd level, and this is the closest we can get. And then on top of that, we are going to pick up Catnap here as well. This was in Xanathar's Guide to Everything. This is one of 2 basically 10-minute short rests that you can get in these spells. Catnap only affects 3 creatures that can only be affected by it once per long rest. But again, in terms of supporting our team members by giving them a quick short rest to refresh some of their resources, I really like these kinds of spells, in addition to one that we'll probably see later that I've also picked up in past videos. Level 6 then brings us our extra attack feature. This is the special extra attack that allows us to cast a cantrip when we take the attack action in addition to attacking once. So either we can make 2 attacks or we can attack once and cast a cantrip, and that cantrip can be any cantrip, such as a Blade Ward, such as a Mage Hand, or a True Strike, or a Thunderclap, whatever we want to do. And because we're trying to be more of a party support bard, we don't really have that many good choices at level 3. I actually wanted to drop back to level 2 spells at this level and pick up Calm Emotions. It's not something that will come up all the time, but it does currently suppress the Charmed and Frightened conditions on allies. Arguably, something like Lesser Restoration, which I've picked up previously, is also very good here and probably generally more useful. But I do like the fact that Calm Emotions can just hit more than one creature. So then let's go ahead and move on to level 7, where we get our 4th level spells. We also get the Counter Charm ability at this level. It's at this point that we're going to end up dropping Enhanceability and pick up Freedom of Movement. We're also going to pick up Dimension Door. Dimension Door is just one of those spells that if it's on the spell list, I'm going to have a really hard time convincing myself not to pick it. It is just the right answer in so many situations. Freedom of Movement, again, focusing on those party buffs because it does upcast to additional targets if you cast it at higher levels. Moving on then to level 8, we get our 2nd ability score increase. We're going to pick up our +2 to Charisma. Again, we are a full caster. I think that just having the highest save bonus as soon as possible is just the best thing that we can do. It also increases our Bardic Inspiration and other features for the Bard as well. So I really just value having a 20 in our Charisma as soon as possible. And then for our next 4th level spell, we'll pick up Fount of Moonlight at this time. This isn't my favorite choice right now. It is one of the newer spells, so I just kind of wanted to pick it for that reason. It does help us do a little bit more damage on our attacks when we are making attacks. It allows us to be more of a martial focused bard when we want to be. It does allow us to potentially blind creatures within 60 feet if we're hit by an attack using our reaction. So I mean, it's not the worst spell, but it's again not really going with the whole theme that I was trying to put together. But again, we're just dealing with the constraints that the bard feels. Again, with many of these builds, especially the 2 that I did previously, it didn't really feel like things really got going until after level 10 when we got Magical Secrets and we can pick pretty much any spell in the game. But not every build can be completely selfless, even if you're trying to play a support. Sometimes you just gotta do a little something for yourself, and that's kind of what Fount of Moonlight is doing here for the bard. So then moving on to level 9, we get our 5th level spells. We get our next level of expertise. So you can pick 2 more skills to have expertise in, doesn't really matter. We're gonna pick up Mass Cure Wounds here. We do have Healing Word at 1st level, level as a bonus action way to heal, and then we're going to pick up Mass Cure Wounds as our action. That way we're never stuck in a situation where both of our healing spells, if we choose like Healing Word and Mass Healing Word, are both on our bonus action, and then for an offensive spell, again, because we're stuck with the current Bard spell list, Animate Objects is a decent offensive option. It doesn't really fit the theme here, but I think it's just generally a good spell, and you are sort of a martial focus, so things that are attacking, I guess, kind of work with it, but we're just going to keep that for one level, because at level 10 we finally get Magical Secrets, and we can finally choose other spells. So at level 10 we get our Bardic Inspiration becomes a D10. We're going to pick up Thorn Whip or Shillelagh at this time, if we didn't pick up Shillelagh before from our species or background. And for our 5th level spell options, we're actually going to drop Animate Objects at this time and pick up Holy Weapon. Holy Weapon can add a bunch of radiant damage to any weapon that we touch. It doesn't have to be our weapon, so if we have a stronger martial character who's making a bunch more attacks than we are, then we can cast it on their weapon, and then later on we have the choice of ending the spell early to cause a lot of damage at once. Then as a way of bolstering our party, we'll pick up Circle of Power as well. This gives allies within 30 feet advantage on saving throws against spells and magical effects. And if we would make the save and take half damage, we take no damage instead, although we still take full damage if we fail the save completely. We finally have Magical Secrets. We can kind of finally start cooking, so we're going to move on then to level 11, where we get our 6th level spells. We will drop Fount of Moonlight at this time because we have Holy Weapon now. We can buff someone else's weapon. We don't need to worry about buffing our own necessarily. We'll also pick up Tasha's Bubbling Cauldron. This can create a number of potions of the same kind of any uncommon quality potion. There's a lot of fun options in there. It could just be one of the potions of healing. There's like a potion of like Hill Giant Strength I think you can do, and give everyone on your party a decent strength. There's a lot of fun options that you can choose. I think I've covered it once in one of my videos before. And then additionally, we're also going to choose Word of Recall. This is like a Hearthstone if you've played World of Warcraft before, or any sort of RPG where you can teleport back to a singular location. You do have to set that up by previously casting it in a safe space that you've designated as a sanctuary. If you're playing with Bastions, that's also just a very good place to put your Word of Recall to just automatically teleport there. So basically our Word of Recall is just going to be our panic button in case our party gets into a lot of trouble and we need to just dip really quickly. We can just go back to a safe space in an instant like that. Another spell I was considering is Fizban's Platinum Shield, which does similar things to Circle of Power, but it only affects one creature at a time. So I'd rather just keep Circle of Power, and I don't want to flood my 6th level spells too much. I'm still happy with kind of where we are right now. So then moving on to level 12, we get our next ability score increase and/or feat, and we're going to actually pick up Defensive Duelist at this time. I know early on when the Player's Handbook came out, I did like the tier list of the feats in the Player's Handbook, and I think I ranked Defensive Duelist relatively low. I would probably put it much higher now. We are just going to be in melee more often, so we're going to be taking more melee attacks than we normally would. So a feat like that does a lot of work for us. And then for our spells, we don't get another spell choice at this level, but we will switch out Enlarge Reduce for Haste. That's basically something that I've wanted to do since 3rd level, but of course the Bard doesn't have Haste. So this has just been a long time coming. Moving on then to 13th level, we get our 4th level spells at this time. I'm going to drop Thunder Wave completely here. I think at this level, it's not really doing a whole lot. And then we'll pick up Prayer of Healing. This is the other spell where we can take a short rest in 10 minutes. Prayer of Healing can affect, I think, up to 6 creatures, unlike Catnap, which can only affect 3. So you can likely hit your whole party unless you're playing with a massive group. Basically get some healing, get a free short rest to get a bunch of your resources back, and then continue going without having to waste a whole hour. And then at 7th level, we're actually going to pick up Conjure Celestial here. This is basically like a Moonbeam on steroids. It both damages enemies and heals your allies. But unlike Moonbeam, which requires your action to move it around the battlefield, this one just moves when you move, and you can choose where it goes. So you can basically just carve the most efficient path across the battlefield to heal as many allies as you can touch, and then damage as many enemies as you can touch. Very fun spell to use. Even Moonbeam is crazy now. So that then brings us to level 14. We get our Battle Magic feature. This is the one that says after we cast a spell that has a casting time of an action, we can make one attack with the weapon as a bonus action. We will drop Hypnotic Pattern or Fireball. This is arguably a mistake because, again, Hypnotic Pattern can really just end an encounter. However, I just wanted to be a little bit more aggressive. Again, I wasn't trying to build a controller, so having a spell like Hypnotic Pattern is sort of antithetical to that. While we don't have any personal blaster spells right now, I think just having a Fireball, having a non-concentration damage-oriented spell like a Fireball is generally very useful. And we don't really have anything filling that role right now. Moving on then to level 15, where we get our 8th level spells. We're actually going to trade out our Circle of Power now for Holy Aura. Holy Aura is just basically a much more powerful version of Circle of Power. It gives us advantage on all saving throws, not just spells and magical effects, but all saving throws. We don't get the ability to avoid damage, so it's possibly better to have both. However, I did also want to pick up absorb elements at this time back at first level. This just gives us, again, another layer of defense because we don't have a lot of resistances right now. Then at level 16, we get our next ability score increase, and we're going to be taking the Mage Slayer feat. I'm taking a lot of the same feats as you'll notice. I just think that these are some of the best ones that we have right now in 2024. We'll use this to buff our dexterity up to 16. I was also considering Resilient Wisdom, but I still like the fact that Mage Slayer protects at least one of our mental saves once per short rest by allowing us to just choose to succeed, and lets us choose a non-mental stat to boost, like it's because you choose strength or dexterity. Whereas if you're choosing Resilient Wisdom, you have to buff your wisdom in order to get the bonus. I've always said before that I wish Resilient was that you could put +1 in a stat and then choose proficiency in a saving throw you don't have. Maybe that would make it too good, but with Mage Slayer existing, I think that can exist just fine. And we are kind of getting to the point where I don't really feel like there's a whole lot of changes we can make, but I will trade out Healing Word for just the heal spell at level 6 now. Again, our level 6 spells are relatively situational. We might not cast Word of Recall every day. We might use one Bubbling Cauldron, so we might have an extra spell slot now to drop on a heal. And, we're at level 16, so our hit points are pretty high right now to the point that, a Healing Word, unless we're upcasting it, isn't going to do a whole lot of healing. So unless we're just aggressively focusing on healing, basically one cast of heal is going to do more than Healing Word will do throughout an entire adventuring day. It just feels a little bit more practical overall. And then finally at level 17 we get our 9th level spells, and again, since we're trying to focus on being more of a support oriented bard, there are tons of great 9th level spells, but I think the one that fits our theme the most here is going to be Foresight. Arguably Mass Heal is also a great choice here, but we already picked Mass Heal in a previous video. We already have Heal here as well. Mass Cure Wounds at 5th level is also great. Foresight giving someone advantage on all d20 tests for the next 8 hours. You just pop that on your big attacker and then they just go ham on every combat, and then you can just cast Haste or Holy Weapon on them and they just kind of carve through the battlefield very easily. So I really like Foresight for our purposes of being this sort of more battlefield support. At this point we have all our subclass features. We have basically all the spells that we're going to have. So now we're just kind of like filling in blanks here. So at 18th level we're going to drop back and pick up Resurrection. We're actually going to pay full price for Resurrection here. I know in previous videos I've basically just said you should just pick up Wish and use that to cover all the situational spells like your Resurrection, but you only really get one 9th level spell slot, and I feel like we're going to be wanting to be using that probably on Foresight. We don't want to be saving it for Wish all the time. So our 9th level spell slot is kind of spoken for, so we do need to kind of go back and cover our bases with things like a Resurrection. We also get Superior Inspiration at this level, so we get our inspiration back on Initiative. We get a couple of them back. So then moving on to level 19, we get to kind of get our final big choice, which is our Epic Boon. Since we don't have a lot of defenses and we are a martial focused bard, at least we'll be in melee range more often than not. We don't have to be, but I think that in my head, that's how I was imagining this one. I'm going to choose the Epic Boon of Energy Resistance here. Again, we'll take the +1 to Charisma in case we get an opportunity to get it to 22 eventually, but having 2 floating resistances in addition to like absorb elements to cover some other bases as well. But I really like the Boon of Energy Resistance here for something that's going to be taking probably more damage than normal. We'll also just pick up Dominate Monster here. That's just another powerful 8th level spell. Not every adventuring day might call for Holy Aura, so I wanted to kind of have a backup 8th level spell here, and while there aren't really any other 8th level spells that really fit our theme, Dominate Monster is just always good. And that finally brings us to level 20 where we get our capstone, Words of Creation. So we have Power Word Kill and Power Word Heal, and we can fork it when we cast it once per day to another creature that is within 10 feet of the original target. And then we'll also go back to 6th level and pick up the Forbiddance spell. I mainly picked this one up because we lack really any other ritual spells, and this one just happens to be a ritual. And since we're at level 20, many of the creatures that Forbiddance works against would also likely be the kinds of creatures that are affected by a spell like Forbiddance. So I just think that could be pretty useful in the right situations, especially at this level. Overall, I'm pretty satisfied with the College of Valor. I think of all the Bard subclasses, I've always been more drawn to like the College of Swords and the College of Valor, especially the College of Valor post 2024, because I think it works so much better now. However, I'm not nearly as excited about this one as a pure classed bard as I was about like the College of Dance or even the College of Glamour, which is odd because again, I expected this one to kind of be one of my favorite, or one of the more easiest, or at least one of the easiest to build. But the College of Valor really benefits, and again, this is just the result of being more of a martial focus, that it benefits more from multi-classing. Whether you're choosing it with like like the Warlock dip to get the Eldritch Blast with your extra attack, or getting your weapon masteries and fighting styles and things like that. If you're trying to play a truly martial focused bard, you pretty much want to multi-class. So for that reason, it was harder than I thought it would be to pick up the spells that I think would be necessary. I couldn't really focus on my own damage because I feel like a holy weapon is just going to do so much better on another target. So I was like, I have to build a like a party support who's also just kind of up in enemies' faces and taking up space. Now, I will say one thing that really hurts in 2024, since Magical Secrets now can't choose from any spell in the game, it can only choose from like the wizard, cleric, or druid spell list, is that they no longer have access to spells like Crusader's Mantle, which is on the paladin spell list. Arguably, we also could have picked up Bless at some point to be more of a buffer in that way. I don't know what I'd necessarily give up, maybe Command, but I also just think that we have enough competition for our concentration already that a spell like Bless is just maybe not going to be our priority most of the time. That is my sort of build for a pure classed Valor Bard, something that, again, I would play it. Not as excited about it as I thought I would be, but I'd still be happy to play this. I'd probably play one of my other Bard builds before I'd play this one. I think if I was going to play College of Valor, I would want to multi-class it in some way. Let me know what you think about the kind of spell choices that we made here and the theme we tried to build around, you know, being mostly a party support. We have like one blaster spell like Fireball or Holy Weapon, exploding that one, but that's also a buff spell. I'm really interested to know what you think about this down in the comments below, especially if you've played a high-level Valor Bard of any sort, especially if you haven't multi-classed, you just played a pure Valor Bard. What kind of spells did you choose? How did you build around it? The next Bard subclass that we're going to look at is the final one that is in the player's handbook, is going to be the Lore Bard. When I was making these slides, again, I'd been putting off the Lore Bard specifically because I know that it doesn't really have an obvious theme with it, other than the fact that you just get extra, you know, dose of magical secrets early at level 6. So I was pretty clueless as to what I was going to do with the Lore Bard, but we'll have to wait and see what I did with that one in the next video. So again, that's everything that I wanted to say in this video. Let me know what your thoughts were about everything for the Valor Bard here in this video down below in the comments. And while you're going down to those comments, please hit that like button. If you're a new viewer or returning viewer to this channel and you like what you saw here and you want to see more from me, please consider hitting that subscribe button and support the channel. I release videos every Wednesday, so you always have something to look forward to. I appreciate your time, and I'll see you in the next one.